Welcome to week 143 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
We finished episode 694, which originally aired Monday, April 20th, 1987. And we have a couple of cast sightings in other shows. We were watching Harry O, and it was Henry Darrow's last episode. Henry Darrow, of course, will be playing Cruz's father someday. And guess who was in the same room with his character, although I don't think they were in the same shot at the same time? Carmen Zapata, who plays Cruz's mother. So that was fun to see both of Cruz's parents in the same episode of Harry O.
And I feel like we've seen them together before in other things.
I think maybe we have, yeah. And then we watched Dragnet, the one from the 2000s, starring Ed O'Neill as Joe Friday. Episode 7, The Artful Dodger. And who should appear but Marcello Armonti himself, Wolf Muser. And, of course, I thought, oh, he's the bad guy right from the beginning. And he wasn't. He actually didn't appear again after the first scene. So that was disappointing, actually. It's just the kind of guy you cast as the bad guy art dealer. Well, let's head to Santa Barbara in the 1980s. Actually, we are heading to Utah, and Bigfoot turns around and checks Eden's pulse and takes off his mask to reveal he's not a Bigfoot after all. He's just a guy. Kane leaves and returns later with a sledge to pull Eden, and he pulls her around for most of the episode. So I feel like his cabin is so far away from the accident site that even if they figure out that Eden went off that cliff, they're never going to find her. He stops to check his gun when he hears howling wolves. So not only is that cabin far from anywhere, it's surrounded by deadly wolves, so Eden won't be able to escape. And she's blind and probably paralyzed too. So I think we've got some potentially interesting stuff ahead for Eden. I think this is all dependent on how charismatic the actor who plays Kane will be. It could really, be a dud storyline if no one cares about him. Jane, of course, was in the midst of being attacked by Ken. I don't know why I'm seeing thumbs up on my screen. Jane kicks Ken and then squirts lighter fluid into his eyes and escapes. And she makes it to Johnny's and tells Pearl and... who was there? I forget who was there with Pearl. That Ken is the rapist. So everyone knows suddenly. And next thing we know, forensics has checked out Pearl's apartment. It's Cruz, it looks like, because that scene's playing right now. That scene, the forensics guys go over the apartment, but Ken has managed to clean up everything. All the evidence, the mask is gone, anything that could tie anything to him. Meanwhile, he's doubled back to Johnny's, and the bartender who's working that night, I believe his name was Gavin, maybe, he manages to convince him that Pearl double booked them both, and that he says, I'd rather work the shift if you wouldn't mind going home. And so Gavin goes home, and Ken promptly cleans all the cash out of the cash register and takes off.
I was a bit relieved to see him take off, because I, had some fears. Of course, Jane actually comes back, so I had some fears that he would attack her again.
Yeah, I kind of got that vibe for a second, too, when he sent Gavin home. Pearl returns and notices the money is missing, but they are soon distracted by the radio, which announces that Eden Capwell's plane is missing in the mountains of Utah. So the news has started to spread. Jeffrey hears about Eden's missing plane on the radio and tries to avoid telling Kelly by focusing on their campaign, but she can see that something's wrong, and eventually he admits that he heard that Eden's plane has crashed. And so Kelly goes to the beach house and tells Cruz about Eden's plane. Sophia gets a phone call that Eden's plane went down, and they tell Ted the bad news. Cruz and Kelly arrive, and Kelly wants to go to Utah with Cruz to look for Eden. Of course, everyone thinks that's a bad idea, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, by the end of the episode, Kelly is going with Cruz.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll actually be maybe fun.
It's an interesting combo. We don't actually see them working together.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen so much of Kelly and Jeffrey, and it will actually be kind of nice to get a little break from that. So,
yeah, this is Cruz and Kelly. Aside from that time that she was jumping up and down in his bed when he was recuperating in the Capwell living room or wherever it was.
A while ago.
They haven't had a lot of scenes together, just the two of them. So, this will actually be kind of fun, I think. Also, the fact that Eden won't be, dragging down the scenes. Julia finds Cruz coiling up a rope because he wants to be ready for anything. I think she's like, I think they'll have rope there, when you get there. So, so Cruz has packed some rope. And I imagine they'll be arriving at a random spot in Utah, just trudging around. I mean, I guess they know where the plane went down. So that's going to be miles from where Eden is because, the plane would have flown away from the airport and presumably Mystery Woman wouldn't have flown dished it right where Eden's body is. So they're going to be on a wild goose chase for quite a while. You're going to have to put some two and two together, I think, to figure out that Eden wasn't well, obviously they won't find her body, right? So they're going to have to get a clue from somewhere that Eden, wasn't on that plane, and then somehow that she was in that car and that she went off the cliff. Like, I don't know where the evidence is. I don't remember what clue it could have been, because that purse that fell out I thought was going to be a clue, but then Mystery Woman put it back in the car. So, I don't really know if there are any clues out there. They might be searching for a long time.
Well, and you assume the snow is kept falling, so it's covering up a lot of stuff too, right?
Yeah, but even so far from where they think Eden is, that, even if they saw tracks, no one would assume that was Eden. I don't remember her dropping a hat or a scarf or anything. So, I think that the evidence is not there that could point to where Eden is. So I think she's going to have to, escape the mountain man on her own when her eyesight returns. And that is it for this Monday episode. So I just got this Texas book in the mail that, I ordered. Texas, of course, was a spin-off of Another World, my favorite soap. And I did try to watch it as a kid, but found it very boring. But now I've got at least half the episodes, thanks to Chuck Schnitzler, I believe, on YouTube, who posted so many of them, that I'm going to give it another go, especially because Beverly McKinsey's in at least the first year, after which I think I really found it boring when she left. So maybe when we finish those AOL and Other Worlds that we're working our way through still, we'll start watching Texas.
I notice it does say that it was daytime TV's answer to Dallas, and I know you were a huge Dallas fan back in the day. So
yeah, that's probably why I tried hanging in there for so long, especially because I think Vivian moved to Texas too at some point to be with Iris, which really would have upped the interest for me, but I found a lot of the other characters quite dull, if I recall correctly. So I think only a couple of Another World characters moved to Texas. So anyway, if I find anything interesting in here, I'll mention it. That is it for this episode. We'll see you after we watch episode 695. See you then.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We have watched episode 695 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Tuesday, April 21st, 1987. And since we last saw you, we have seen James Hong, who played two roles in Santa Barbara, in Anatomy of a Frame, the first episode of the second season of Harry-O. And he did an American accent this time, but I don't think his own. I think he got to put on a different type of American accent. So I don't know if we've ever heard him with his real accent in anything. All right, back in Santa Barbara, Did I say this aired originally Tuesday, April 21st, 1987? Kane drags Eden to his cabin. He tries to warm up her hands and feet. She occasionally regains consciousness, and he tells her that he's going to make sure she recovers. She sees her clothes drying on the line, and he explains that he had to take them off because they were wet. Throughout this episode, Eden doesn't say anything, and she goes in and out of consciousness. So, at one point, she hallucinates Cruz, but then her vision resolves itself to Kane, and her vision is blurry this entire episode. So I feel like that's on the road to recovery.
That would probably be the snow blindness she had, I would think.
Kane tells her that no one will hurt you anymore, which is kind of a creepy sounding thing to say. And he says, no one, you're gonna pull through. I give you my word. I haven't given that to too many people in my life. So first of all, this guy wears camouflage, and his name is Kane, which maybe means he killed someone. I feel like there may be a Vietnam background to him. 1987, 12 years later. I don't know, he's old enough, I think. He looks kind of grizzled enough to have been in Vietnam. I suspect whatever drove him into the woods, it's going to be Vietnam related. That's going to be my guess.
And one of the things that amazes me about this episode, and you can see a little bit of it in the clip showing behind us, is the amount of location footage we get in this. And this is almost unheard of for soap operas now. So we do get to see some very nice snowy vistas in this episode.
They made the most of their location shooting. I don't know how long they shot on location. Maybe they got it all done in a day, but some good stuff there. Eden can't move her legs. Her vision is returning. He takes off her engagement ring to put her hands in warm water, and when he warms up her feet, he realizes she can't feel anything in her feet. So I'm wondering if that bonk on the tree really did maybe paralyze her. And so it's not the blindness that's going to keep Eden stuck in that cabin. I think it's the paralysis.
And of course, being the cynic I am, I'm starting to imagine some future scene of her crawling around in the snow trying to escape and not being able to use her legs.
Well, that was a long way. Like, even with snowshoes on, that was a long trek to wherever they are, and Eden has no idea where they are. So I don't know how she's going to get, word out to anyone if Kane decides that maybe she should be his bride or something.
The bride of Kane.
Sheriff Calloway arrives with Eden's driver's license and keys and tells Cece and Kelly that the debris of the plane was spread over 5 miles, and they have stopped looking for Eden's body. Kelly and Cece accept that Eden is dead. Cruz is driving still towards the sheriff's station, and he spots a blonde woman at the side of the road, which for a second I thought was going to be our mystery woman, but it's just some random skier that had the same long hair as Eden. Cruz arrives at the sheriff's station and won't accept that Eden is dead. He demands to see the flight logs and the weather maps. He charters a helicopter and goes out to look for the wreckage himself. He finds that everything is already covered in snow. And he has the plane land, and he looks out over the valley that's covered in snow, and he takes a rose that he picked up at the sheriff's office and puts it in the dirt. And I think at this point, he has given up hope of ever finding Eden. And I'm surprised, because I thought it was going to drag on for weeks of them searching for her. But in one day, I think they've all decided Eden is dead. He returns and apologizes to Sheriff Calloway and says it's time to go back to Santa Barbara. So Eden's going to be stuck in that cabin for a long time, I suspect. And what's going to happen in Santa Barbara? Will Cruz move on with one of the other ladies in town? Santana's left town, so it's not going to be her. Who have we got? Jane? Or who else is single? Caroline?
Well, I mean, depending on how long this storyline goes on, and you've indicated it seems at least like a very long time, Maybe he could even get married.
And Eden could regain her steps and steal some of Cain's snowshoes just in time to burst into the wedding.
Or just after, knowing Cruz and Eden.
Well, we'll see if they introduce any new potential love interests for Cruz. Although, Mason and Victoria's marriage could break down if the things get revealed and fall apart. Although,
Well, and we've still got the lady who instigated all of this. We don't really know her connection, or we're assuming she's from Eden's past. She seems to be. Maybe she has designs on Cruz somehow. I don't know.
Well, we will see if she shows up again. Clearly, they wouldn't just leave some random woman, never to return after 2 episodes. So.
Well, you were so excited to see her. I'm assuming she's a little more than a day player.
Well, you've met her at one of our Santa Barbara events, so.
I probably have. People don't quite look the same.
No, it's been 40 years now.
40 years after.
Victoria tells Mason that Eden's plane went down, and they head to the mansion. Rosa has shorter hair, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. The media keeps calling, and Sophia keeps hanging up on them. Mason and Sophia hug when they hear the news from Cece that Eden is dead. Sophia goes up to Eden's room, and Mason tells Victoria that Dad kept it as a shrine to Eden when she went off to Europe. He says, "I'd like to propose a toast to my sister. You played a lot of tricks on us when we were children. This one really..." Oh, there's a typo there. I have no idea what it says.
But this does seem to be CC's MO, because remember, he kept a whole wing of the house as a shrine when Channing was murdered.
Yep, he has 2 shrine rooms. He had 2 shrine rooms going on at the same time on the 2nd floor of the Capwell mansion. This one really things, I have written down. I wonder if it was stings. Maybe I'll put
Never know.
Maybe I'll put that clip into the show, into the podcast, so that your tension will be finally abated. Alex tells Jeffrey they should stay away from the Capwells. Jeffrey decides to give some flowers to Sophia anyway, and is annoyed to find Dr. Nicholas there, comforting Sophia. Sophia tells Mason to stop sniping at Jeffrey. Mason tells Jeffrey that he has no quarrel. Oh, no, that's wrong. Alex tells Jeffrey that he has no quarrel with Sophia and Kelly and Eden, but if they take down Mason and Cece, they will inevitably take down the rest of the family. It's sad, but very necessary, he says. So I feel like, they are focused on Cece and Mason, and that makes sense because Pamela was married to Cece, and Mason was Pamela's son, and if they're trying to avenge Pamela's, fate at the hands of them by being kicked out of Santa Barbara, and B, ostensibly, I think they think Mason didn't try to have any contact with his mother, when we know that's kind of the opposite, so... And unless I've missed something, I think that is it for this episode of Santa Barbara. We've been watching, the last couple of episodes we've watched are from someone who had put them on YouTube. Can't remember which group it was. Maybe they weren't supposed to be on YouTube. I think they were the ones people were supposed to pay for. But anyway, they're the ones with the credits completely replaced by a full set of alternating cast credits and crew credits from the entire 9 years of Santa Barbara, and so we do not know if these last 2 episodes had credits on original airing, and I've tried to find the Russian episodes to confirm that if I can, but these are the only English-speaking episodes we've got at this point, and there's a bit of a run. We're kind of through the ones where we have the proper episodes, so it might be a bit more hit and miss for the rest of the show. And we will return after we watch episode 696 of Santa Barbara. Maybe Mystery Woman will turn up again. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
She wasn't in her room when I went to find her.
Where was she?
In Eden's old room.
Maybe she feels closer to her there. I used to call it the shrine. You know, when Eden had gone off to Europe, Dad kept everything exactly the way it was. I guess a sort of tribute to her perfection.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 696 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Wednesday, April 22nd, 1987. And today's May the 20th in 2026. Of course, it's the day that Hans Riker set up his elevator death trap for Cece and Kelly. Well, Kelly was an unwitting victim, but Diana's just gone down and picked up my TV Week, so I know that he hasn't done the same in our building. So that's nice. Lucy asks Ted why he didn't want to speak about Eden in their group, and Ted is having a hard time talking about Eden's death. And he doesn't really want to talk about it to Haley either. Finally, he tells Haley about a dance he went to in the 7th grade that Cece was supposed to chaperone, but Cece had to bail out, and Eden somehow convinced the school that she could chaperone this 7th grade dance. And she ended up being the hit of the dance. Haley says that she wants to be there for Ted and wants to spend the night with him, and he agrees. Now, I took a look at the appearances list, and this appears to be Lucy's, Sashi Parker's, last appearance, but someone called Lucy Pickett is going to be showing up in a couple of episodes, played by Louise Foley, billed as Wish Foley. I strongly suspect that's the same character. You wouldn't have two Lucys back to back, so I think we're going to be seeing a recast for Lucy in a couple of days. That would be nice if this somehow brought Ted and Haley back together.
Yeah, I assumed that this character was basically there as a bridge between them, but it occurs to me that if they are going to all the effort of recasting the character, perhaps they'll play a bigger role going forward.
Kane discovers that Eden has a fever, so he takes her to a small hospital, which appears to have one doctor and one nurse, and tells the doctor that she is his sister, and he pays cash for her treatment. Eden is still unable to speak, and after the x-rays and some additional tests, the doctor concludes that Eden will never walk again. Wow, that's even worse than we thought.
And I'm not entirely clear from Eden's behavior, which she just seems quite stunned, whether she even really is taking in what's going on, or if maybe she even possibly has amnesia or something like that. She seems very, very out of it.
Yeah. The final scene where she overhears the doctor telling Kane that she'll never walk in, she had just been sedated, so that was on top of her already, very, very non-reactive, actions throughout this last couple of episodes. Keith leaves an offensive message on Cruz's answering machine. Pearl and Jane burst in to demand that Brick be released, and he says, well, if it isn't Nancy Drew and her little dog Pearl. Keith says that all he has is Jane's word about what happened, and there's really no evidence in Pearl's apartment. But he does reveal later that he does have an APB out for Ken. Julia arrives with a petition for the court to have Brick released, and all she wants from Keith is just assurance that the DA's office will not contest her petition, and he signs her paper.
Now, I feel that Brick is still not necessarily out of the woods on this. Because, as we see in this episode, some of the action does actually move to Brick's house.
Yeah, we'll see. I have a feeling it's coming to a head somehow, but we will see. It certainly doesn't wrap up in this episode, and in fact ramps up.
No, but it's interesting they use this as a device. Keith coming in and offering his apology for his obnoxious message.
No, which hasn't happened yet.
Oh.
I haven't talked about that yet. Cruz wakes up on the couch next to a bottle of tequila. Eden tells him he's been sleeping all day, And then he wakes up to find that it wasn't Eden at all, that it was Julia talking to him. Cruz catches Julia trying to return all his wedding presents and says he'll do it himself. And he spots Eden's handwriting on one of the cards, and it's a photo album that she started. She has left a note saying we won't have any wedding photos because we're getting married in the middle of nowhere, but here's a photo of us to start it out, and we'll fill this with photos of our children and grandchildren. Cruz is already not in too great a mood, so this doesn't really pep him up a bit. Ted arrives to check on Cruz. He can't really do anything to cheer him up. Ted's pretty sullen himself. Julia returns with Brick, who's been released from jail. And this is actually a really good scene between Brick and Cruz. Brick says, "Oh, that day that you brought me the news about Amy, all I remember about that day is you standing there with Eden and you telling me. I somehow became different. I knew you'd never understand. Today I wish you didn't have to." So this is actually a nice thing I had never expected. I didn't think Brick was going to be let out of jail today, for one thing, but this was actually a good connection between Brick and Cruz. Keith's temporary secretary, who is there because apparently Gina was sent to Sacramento to work as a secretary for the governor or something, or the attorney general. I don't know where that came from. Presumably it's because Robin Mattson was not available, either on vacation or sick or something. But the actress who plays the secretary kind of seemed familiar.
She looked very familiar to me.
Yeah, I don't know if she was on some sitcom at some point. I'll have to look it up. That's actually the reason that I looked at the appearances list that I had and didn't see anything about an alternate secretary. But that's where I saw the Lucy information. So, she had tried to stop Keith from leaving that message earlier, and finally shows him the newspaper that says Eden Capwell dies in fiery plane crash. He races over to the beach house to apologize to Cruz for the voicemail that he left, but Cruz hasn't listened to it yet, and insists on listening to it while Keith watches. And there's a lot of stuff about him marrying Eden for her money and a bunch of racist stuff. So, after listening to the message, he encounters a second message on the tape that Eden had left, and he kicks both Keith and Julia out of his place so he can replay the message over and over. Okay, you wanted to say something about Keith?
Oh, just that this was a kind of interesting device to get us to the part of the show where we really see Cruz mourning Eden. I mean, he's been moping around in that, but this voice message is really the thing, I think, that sums up their relationship and what appears now to be lost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like Cruz has given up, I think, is what we're seeing here. Julia brings Brick over just because he's come over to her place to pick up Johnny. That's the reason he's actually come down there, and then I guess Julia told him about what happened and brought him over. Ken, the bartender, picks the lock on the Perkins front door and lets himself in. I wondered throughout this episode, where is Marissa Perkins, and why does no one mention her? He hides in the closet, so Marissa's presumably not home, as Jane and Pearl enter to get some of Johnny's toys. Back at Johnny's, Pearl has hired a new bartender, and she is amused at Jane and Pearl's bickering. Brick arrives, surprising everyone, and says, "I leave the place for 5 minutes and the place goes to hell." Later, Ken phones, and the new bartender answers, and he pretends to be Brick. She hasn't really met him long enough to realize that it's not Brick, and the fake message is for Jane to come to the Perkins house at 7 o'clock with Johnny's stuff. Confuses Jane a bit because she's just picked up Johnny's stuff, but I think at the time that Pearl and Brick and Jane picked up that stuff, they did not know that Brick was going to be released, so they were going to bring it over to Julia's. Haley and Ted and Pearl and Brick all return to Johnny's at one point to talk about Eden. And when Pearl mentions that he would like Jane to go back to Johnny's place tonight, Brick says, "Oh, I was kind of hoping that she would come home with me." It's kind of fun. And then the bartender overhears and that said, "Oh, she's already over at your place because you called earlier to tell her to go there." And Brick and Pearl immediately realize it must have been Ken phoning with a phony message to trap Jane, and they race over to the Perkins house. Pearl and Brick burst in just after we see Ken threatening Jane, saying, "Oh, you're the only witness, I have to get rid of you." Then we hear the voice of Pearl and Brick outside shouting, and when they burst in, Ken and Jane are gone, and all that's left is Jane's purse. So I don't think they could have gotten very far. They might have gone into that front room that was at one point Johnny's nursery. But presumably Ken and Jane are still in the house, even though Pearl and Brick might think he's taken her somewhere else.
Yeah, it occurred to me during this scene that, there isn't really necessarily an upside for Jane to comply with Ken, because he's already said he's going to kill her. He has to kill her.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming she wouldn't just go off with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they were at the other end of the living room when he attacked her with the knife, right by the doorway to the nursery that I think previously was a front room before Johnny was born. So yeah, presumably they ducked in there, but there's no reason for Jane to keep quiet if he's going to kill her anyway. So,
yeah.
Might as well make sure Ken gets captured. So, I like the I like the Keith scenes in this episode. Showed some range of Keith. I mean, he says to someone, I think the secretary, that although he's hated Cruz since high school, maybe probably Julia, although he's hated Cruz since high school, he wouldn't wish this on him. So, I guess maybe we'll find out what's up with Gina, and see if we see that temporary secretary again. She was kind of wacky, so maybe they'll have something for her. I feel like maybe there will be a confrontation with Ken in this upcoming episode, which is episode 697. Oh, we're inching towards 700. We'll see you after we watch episode 697. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I have an APB out on your bartender friend, okay? If you don't have faith in me, the Santa Barbara police may make some mistakes, but they generally get their man. Go talk to them, okay? Maybe they'll find your Ken. Maybe he's found his Barbie. But bug them and leave me in peace.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 697 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Thursday, April 23rd, 1987. And we had a sighting of original C.C. Capwell, Lloyd Bochner, on The Hardy Boys in an episode with Melanie Griffith.
Mm-hmm. A very young Melanie Griffith, probably from the mid or late 1970s.
That is correct. And this week's mug is my Late Night with Conan O'Brien mug that I would have bought in, I would say, 1995 when I went to New York to see Conan, and his guest that day was George Takei. All right, what's happening in Santa Barbara? Well, in Utah, Kane is reading a newspaper, and then he says, "I'm going to make you walk again, Eden." So this is interesting because Eden has not spoken. And her ID was found by the sheriff. So how did Kane know she was Eden? I assume he must have seen an article in the newspaper and put two and two together, which is odd because he found her at the bottom of a cliff, not in a strewn airplane wreckage.
Yeah, this is one of those little mysteries that we'll just have to assume was somehow solved between the lines that off screen.
Yeah. Now, the doctor and nurse think something is wrong because Eden's injuries didn't all come from the fall. They've found the blow on the head that she got from the mystery woman, and of course they suspect Kane. the nurse tries to question Kane on exactly where he lives because they only have a P.O. box for him. But he just says that he lives in a cabin and there are never any people around. So Kane realizes that they're just going to keep prying, and so he knocks out an orderly, steals his clothing, and pushes Eden's gurney out of the hospital, and the next thing you see, he is sledging his way back up to the cabin with Eden.
And it's kind of interesting because the whole time he's doing this, he's sort of trying to persuade Eden that this is the best course of action. She really has nothing literally to say about it because she's zonked out on drugs, she can't see. She's just going to go wherever he takes her, basically.
Mm-hmm. But I think she has gotten enough negative vibes from him that she's somewhat uneasy, I would think, with everything.
Mm-hmm. Now, we know that Eden's prognosis is not good, but I'm assuming that Kane's folk medicine or whatever he's planning to do will go some ways to healing her, because I just don't see Eden Capwell being a paraplegic for the entirety of the series.
Kane had some weird stuff to say. He was like, oh, yeah, I knew a guy. I'm just in my head thinking Innam, who, couldn't walk anymore, and then some magic mumbo-jumbo fixed him up or something. And I'm like, that sounds very unlikely. So, I don't know. Maybe he's hallucinated stuff while he's been in the cabin that never happened. Back in Santa Barbara, Julia finds Cruz drunk, and she notices his gun is just lying out, and she is worried about him. Cruz says, I'm not going to blow my brains out. That would be redundant. You can't kill a dead man. So, then they get the call that Jane has been kidnapped by Ken the bartender, and Cruz races out, against Julia's recommendation that he should let the SWAT team handle it, and he's in no condition to go out and mess with the killer. And also she notices his gun is missing, and he's already left. So she's kind of thinking he's maybe running headlong into danger, because he doesn't really care about his own safety anymore. Lionel has set up a dinner in the backyard of the Lockridge mansion for himself and Carolyn, but it does seem to be a bit chilly. Then they get the call about Jane and head to Johnny's. Ken brings Jane into the basement of an abandoned warehouse that used to belong to Gibson's department store. Pearl and Brick tell Lionel and Carolyn what happened, and then Cruz arrives, followed by Julia. Cruz phones in and finds that the SWAT team is on its way to a warehouse that was previously used by Gibson's department store, and we do see a lot of mannequins in the basement of that store. Julia is worried that Cruz no longer cares if he lives or dies. Inside the warehouse, Jane escapes from Ken, but finds herself unable to find her way out of the maze of offices and mannequins stored in the basement. I forgot to mention that at Johnny's, Cruz finds that Ken's car was spotted near the abandoned warehouse. Brick vanishes while Julia tries to talk Cruz out of going to the warehouse alone. She is worried that he no longer cares if he lives or dies. Inside the warehouse, Jane escapes from Ken, but finds herself unable to find her way out of the maze of offices and mannequins in the basement. She feels a hand around her mouth, but it's Brick, not Ken, and Brick leads her out of the warehouse. Now, I think if I were in a warehouse surrounded by a SWAT team, I'd be very careful coming out of there with the woman that's been kidnapped, because they might suspect I am the kidnapper. So hopefully Brick touched base with them on the way in, and they said, yeah, okay, go on in. We don't mind.
Yeah, especially since Brick was already imprisoned for this crime once.
Yeah, so he must have sneaked past them to get in, and now he's got to come out and not get shot. They leave just as Cruz is arriving. Cruz comes down an alternate staircase, the main one that we've seen, and Ken lies in wait for him and manages to get Cruz's gun. And Cruz, in a very, I guess, dangerous way, approaches Ken slowly but surely and tries to talk him into handing over the gun. Now, this could easily get him shot, but Cruz says to him, "You picked the wrong day for this." So Ken hands him the gun and turns himself in. That was quite a shocker. He didn't seem like the type, quite frankly, based on his other interactions. Back at Johnny's, Carolyn finds a picture of herself in Jane's purse and is very happy to see that. And then Brick and Jane return to Johnny's, and Carolyn and Jane hug. Julia tells Pearl that every time she sees Cruz, he's drunk. Cruz walks in and tells them that Ken is on his way to jail, and tells Pearl that Julia has some interesting theories about him. She thinks I was hoping to get my brains blown out. He's being a bit harsh on Julia, I think.
Yeah.
Back in the Lockridge backyard, Brick and Jane arrive. Lionel tells them there's lots of food. Brick says that he's started to live again and hopes that Jane will be keeping an eye on him. So I think maybe finally Jane has a potential romance on the show that's not going to leave town suddenly.
Yeah.
So, that's it for our episode. So, yeah, I look forward to seeing, now that things have calmed down, how things go with Brick and Jane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, since Santana seems to have wandered off somewhere.
Yeah, no one's mentioned where she's gone, but it's going to be a long time before the actress returns, so presumably they'll mention it at some point. But that's one thing about Santa Barbara, I think more so than other shows. People just stop being around and no one mentions whether they've left town or why we haven't seen them for a while. It's so, the most annoying thing. I know Days of Our Lives famously had Don Craig leave to mail his taxes and never return, and Don Craig was played by Jen Allen, who was our CC Capwell. But I think those things were few and far between.
Yeah, and I think, and maybe it's partly because it wasn't as long as some of the other soap operas, but, you mentioned Days of Our Lives, and I think there was a character who wandered up into the attic and was not really seen or heard from again, but then later they retconned a whole storyline for him and continue to do reference him even now. So they don't entirely forget characters like they seem to do on Days of Our Lives.
I think
Santa Barbara.
I think every time they get a new head writer on Days of Our Lives, they have some, missed plot thread from the last 60 years that they personally want to resolve, and they flesh that out.
The one thing I do find, which would make my experience watching this show very different than people who were watching it the first time around, is that I've been on a cruise now, and I've been to a reunion, and I've heard all sorts of still traumatized fans grumbling about how the Cruz and Eden storyline eventually panned out in the later years of the show. And so I think that makes me perhaps even a little more, if not cynical, a little less invested in the Cruz and Eden storylines as we're experiencing them now.
Once again, we're watching episodes that we got on YouTube with the credits cut off, and I think that's going to be for the foreseeable future, but just based on IMDb credits, and I only have a list of people who were on 2 or more episodes, so maybe I should flesh that out now to people who were one-offs so we can get some more names of some of these one-off people. But I have Randall Brady playing Ken. This is his final episode. And then Doctor was played by John Petlock in these 2 episodes with Kane and Eden. And then, of course, Lucy, we've seen Sachi Parker's last episode, and the new Lucy will be appearing in 701. So that's recent, credit-related things that we may or may not have seen in the credits if we had access to them. And so that is it for this episode. And we've got a Friday one coming up, and we haven't seen Mystery Woman in a while. I'm hoping maybe she will turn up somewhere, and we'll see. Maybe she's got more plans in store for the residents of Santa Barbara. So we'll see you after we watch episode 698. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Welcome back to Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
This is our Friday episode. We finished episode 698, which originally aired Friday, April 24th, 1987. So let's see how our week ends. Well, the Capwell family is ready for Eden's memorial, which was interesting because they raced through declaring Eden dead in one episode. Now they've raced to having a memorial. It turns out no one's ready for a memorial because Kelly tells Jeffrey she's not ready to say goodbye to Eden. But Jeffrey says she has to go to the memorial service and spends the episode talking her into going. Cece is in the study watching home movies of Eden, and it looks like they got some footage of Marcy Walker as a kid. So he sits there in the dark watching the home movies, and they look to be on actual film, 16mm or something, because presumably the Capwells were able to afford a 16mm camera or even camera crew to follow them around during their kids' growing up years. He's flipping through photo albums. Alternatively, Ted and Haley try to get him to come out of the study, but he is also not ready. Keeps talking about his beautiful daughter. And finally, Sophia manages to convince him to come out. Ted is happy that Haley has been spending the night since Eden's death, but Haley reminds him it is just for the time being, as the family needs her, or Ted needs her, while they are dealing with Eden's demise. She was planning to go back to her apartment, or Gina's apartment, I guess, after this is over. Julia interrupts another one of Cruz's dreams, and she asks him how much did he have to drink, and he says, not enough. This is actually kind of a fun Cruz, in a way, this episode.
Yes, we're so used to our very decisive, highly competent Cruz, and he might still have those qualities, but right now he's a bit of a wreck.
Must have been fun for A. Martinez to be playing a little bit something different. And then he complains about all these cards and flowers that people are sending him. He's like, who is it? Who's this for? Is this for Eden? She's not here. Is this for me? I don't want this. So that's an interesting take on that. And he's also having trouble writing his eulogy. He's just writing, I love you, I love you, I love you, all up and down the page. So he ends up going to the beach and sitting on a log for a while. They're ready to start the service, but of course Cruz can't be found. So Mason goes out to look for him and finds him on that log and has a talk with him about Mary and how long it took him, to get over her, but that slowly but surely, he was able to get on with his life, and he manages to talk Cruz into coming to the service.
Yeah, of course he did join a cult briefly as part of that process.
Yeah, we'll see what Cruz does. Presumably he won't just be drinking the whole time. Maybe there will be some ill-advised activities that he takes part in. Cece gives his eulogy first, but breaks down as he's reading To everything there is a season passage from the Bible, and Mason has to come and take over and finish it for him. And then Mason reads from a poem by Wordsworth. The mystery woman is in the chapel. She is hiding behind some ornate but see-through wooden carving that's some kind of divider of stuff that you see in places from time to time. And she is watching this whole ceremony. So nice to see Mystery Woman again. She's made her way to Santa Barbara, so surely she won't remain in the shadows forever.
Well, we think she might have been in the shadows when we were originally introduced to her. So
it makes sense that was that character.
I mean, that's who I'm assuming that shadowy character was. So she already knows Santa Barbara, or at least enough to know where the shadows are. So.
And those shadows that we first saw her in were right next to the beach house. So we'll see if we see her skulking there in the future, because she seems to get very angry, just from what little we can see, when Cruz says, as part of his eulogy, "I was born to be her husband." So I don't know if she's angry about Cruz being Eden's husband, or Eden having a husband, or she seems to be upset with Eden, when we see her kidnap Eden. So it must be something that Eden's done. So interesting that that this line particularly annoys her. Did Eden do something to her years ago and take, someone from her that she was in love with? Maybe at boarding school, as we postulated, or in some other way.
Yeah, I mean, we're sort of piecing together, and it seems like our one hint before Eden got tossed out of the car was that maybe they had known each other in Europe many years ago.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they seem to be about the same age, so. Eden telepathically inserts herself into Cruz's dreams. I feel like they're doing a lot of, when Cruz was sleeping earlier, we cut to Eden in the cabin sleeping, and she seems to be like calling out to him telepathically, and the way they're just editing it, it's, almost makes us think, is the intention here that Cruz is hearing Eden's voice across the ether? Will it suddenly make him think Eden's alive? I wonder if that might be his weird journey, that he gets this bug in his head that, Eden's not dead. Which we see from time to time in soap operas. We're seeing it right now on Days of Our Lives, with Sophia having been smashed on the head and thrown in the river, and Sophia's mother refusing to believe that she's dead. Mainly because they haven't found a body, but it's a common thing, to have one character follow that path. Maybe it'll be Cruz.
Well, we're definitely getting set up for this massive two hearts beat as one, souls that can never be divided kind of relationship between Cruz and Eden.
Mm-hmm. We see Eden in this episode scrawling painfully with her left hand Cruz's name. I don't know if she's left-handed, but it was certainly not legible. So I don't know if that's implying she's got some other nerve damage or motor skill damage in her arms as well. I know there was a last episode, Kane was talking about taking her clothes off again, and she kind of with her eyes indicated she did not want that. And he stopped from changing her again. So last time he changed her clothes, she was unconscious and at risk of hypothermia. So I think that was justified. But she might think that Kane is sort of seeing her as his future wife, as a lot of mountain cabin men do in fiction.
Yes, well, he doesn't seem to have a lot of other people in his life, so.
And at the very end of the episode, Eden hoarsely whispers Cruz's name. So she has regained a tiny bit of her power of speech, which will make her interactions with Kane a little more two-directional. And that is it for our Friday episode. I had seen in the list of appearances that Mystery Woman would be in this episode. A little disappointed that it's so fleeting, but with just her two brief appearances behind that screen, I think we got somehow she managed to emote some displeasure with Eden yet again. So maybe the next time we see her, she will actually speak and interact with people and maybe introduce herself to someone. And we can stop crediting her as Mystery Woman. So that we'll hopefully see another appearance by her next week, week 144, and that week will contain our 700th episode. We haven't got anything special planned though, but with FIFA just on the corner, depending how slowly we record these, maybe there'll be some fun event we can do episode 700 at. I hear that the science world has been rewrapped, I guess, with a new look for FIFA. So maybe it would be fun to go down there and record that. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to go out in the sun currently with some medication I'm having on for my ongoing issues. So we might be sitting in the shade at Science World for episode 700.
And if that doesn't work, they've just opened a very posh new shopping mall, so that might be our second
We were going to
option.
go check it out, but there were warnings that previous mall openings have had so many crowds for almost a month after opening, and we did see the day one crowds, and it did look like it might be a bad idea to go in the near future, but we might try to go on a weekday instead of on the weekend. So
Now, of course, if you're a fan of any other events, they will not be permitted to take place in Vancouver during the World Cup because that is part of FIFA's contract with host cities. So we won't be broadcasting from the Jazz Festival or the Dragon Boat races this year.
were they completely canceled? I didn't know.
Or moved, I don't know.
Oh wow, I hadn't really followed that. I know there's some things about restaurants or whatever displaying banners, just like when the Olympics were here, and Olympia Pizza, which we go to quite often, managed to not have to change their name for the duration of the Olympics, which was funny. A lot of people have been put out a little bit by FIFA, but maybe we can get some free benefit out of it by shooting some things in the background that are just public domain, hopefully. So, all right, it's been a fun, rapid week of Eden being killed. So I hope Mystery Woman has some other plans while she's in Santa Barbara, and we'll see. I mean, she started off super crazy. What more could she do? Quite frankly, I don't remember. I just remember that she was fun, and I was actually quite shocked how quickly she jumped into the craziness. So, April 87. It would have been the end of the semester at SFU, and I still haven't found my old books, so I can't relate what courses I took or what my grades were. But I think this year, 87, I actually stayed in Vancouver. I didn't go back to Kelowna for the summer, and I think my roommate did go back, so I would have been on my own, having fun. May, June, July, August of 87. I'll try and remember what I was doing, where I was working, and see if there's anything interesting. Expo 86 was a year ago. That was a big thing. 87 might have been a lesser year. All right, we will see you in week 144. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, I don't know that the additional pressure of a dangerous job is going to help you out right
I
now.
think you're talking about the additional temptation of having a gun in the house. If I took a leave, I'd have to turn in my piece, and you wouldn't have to worry about lying next door and hearing a shot in the middle of the night. Is that it? I'm not going to blow my brains out. That'd be redundant. Only a fool would try to kill a dead man.